Good morning, this is Ron. Welcome to Story Time. And this is Saturday, July 29th, and I am reading and have been reading The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. And today we are doing, I believe, yes, Law 26. Keep your hands clean. You must seem a paragon of civility and efficiency. Your hands are never soiled by mistakes and nasty deeds. Maintain such a spotless appearance by using others as scapegoats and cat's paws to disguise your involvement. And this is another one of the laws that has two parts to it. So the one part is going to be about scapegoats, and the other one is going to be about cat's paws. So part one, conceal your mistakes, have a scapegoat around to take the blame. Our good name and reputation depend more on what we conceal than on what we reveal. Everyone makes mistakes, but those who are truly clever manage to hide them and to make sure someone else is blamed. A convenient scapegoat should always be kept around for such moments. The use of scapegoats is as old as civilization itself, and examples of it can be found in cultures around the world. The main idea behind these sacrifices is the shifting of guilt and sin to an outside figure, object, animal, or man, which is then banished or destroyed. The Hebrews used to take a live goat, hence the term scapegoat, upon whose head the priest would lay both hands while confessing the sins of the children of Israel. Having thus had those sins transferred to it, the beast would be led away and abandoned in the wilderness. With the Athenians and the Aztecs, the scapegoat was human, often a person fed and raised for the purpose. Since famine and plague were thought to be visited on humans by the gods in punishment for wrongdoing, the people suffered not only from the famine and plague themselves, but from blame and guilt. They freed themselves of guilt by transferring it to an innocent person whose death was intended to satisfy the divine powers and banish the evil from their midst. It is an extremely human response to not look inward after a mistake or crime, but rather to look outward and to affix blame and guilt on a convenient object. When the plague was ravaging Thebes, Oedipus looked everywhere for its cause, except inside himself and his own sin of incest, which had so offended the gods and occasioned the plague. This profound need to exteriorize one's guilt, to project it on another person or object, has immense power, which the clever know how to harness. Sacrifice is a ritual, perhaps the most ancient ritual of all. Ritual, too, is a wellspring of power. In the killing of Diorco, note Caesar's symbolic and ritualistic display of his body. By framing it in this dramatic way, he focused guilt outward. The citizens of Romagna responded instantly. Because it comes so naturally to us to look outward rather than inward, we readily accept the scapegoat's guilt. The bloody sacrifice of the scapegoat seems a barbaric relic of the past, but the practice lives on to this day, if indirectly and symbolically. Since power depends on appearances, and those in power must seem never to make mistakes, the use of scapegoats is as popular as ever. What modern leader will take responsibility for his blunder? He searches out others to blame, a scapegoat to sacrifice. When Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution failed miserably, he made no apologies or excuses to the Chinese people. Instead, he offered up scapegoats, including his own personal secretary and high-ranking member of the party. Franklin Delano Roosevelt had a reputation for honesty and fairness throughout his career. However, he faced many situations in which being the nice guy would have spelled political disaster. Yet, he could not be seen as the agent of any foul play. For 20 years then, his secretary, Louis Howe, played the role Diorco had. He handled the backroom details, the manipulation of the press, the underhanded campaign maneuvers, and whenever a mistake was committed or a dirty trick contradicted, Roosevelt's carefully crafted image became public. Howe served as a scapegoat and never complained. Besides conveniently shifting blame, a scapegoat can serve as a warning to others. In 1631, a plot was hatched to oust France's Cardinal Richelieu from power, a plot that became known as the Day of the Dupes. It almost succeeded, since it involved the upper echelons of government, including the Queen Mother, but through luck and his own connivances, Richelieu survived. One of the key conspirators was a man named Marilec, the keeper of the seals. Richelieu could not imprison him without implicating the Queen Mother, an extremely dangerous tactic. So he targeted Merilac's brother, a marshal in the army. This man had no involvement in the plot. Richelieu, however, afraid that the other conspiracies might be in the air, especially in the army, decided to set an example. He tried the brother on trumped-up charges and had him executed. In this way, he indirectly punished the real perpetrator who had thought himself protected and warned any future conspirators that he would not shrink from sacrificing the innocent to protect his own power. In fact, it is often wise to choose the most innocent victim possible as a sacrificial goat. Such people will not be powerful enough to fight you, and their naive protests may be seen as protesting too much. May be seen, in other words, as a sign of their guilt. Be careful, however, not to create a martyr. It is important that you remain the victim, the poor leader betrayed by the incompetence of those around you. If the scapegoat appears too weak and his punishment too cruel, you may end up the victim of your own device. Sometimes you should find a more powerful scapegoat, one who will elicit less sympathy in the long run. In this vein, history has time and again shown the value of using a close associate as a scapegoat. This is known as the fall of the favorite. Most kings had a personal favorite at court, a man whom they singled out, sometimes for no apparent reason, and lavished with favors and attention. But this court favorite could serve as a convenient scapegoat in case of a threat to the king's reputation. The public would readily believe in the scapegoat's guilt. Why would the king sacrifice his favorite unless he were guilty? And the other courtiers, resentful of the favorite anyway, would rejoice at his downfall. The king, meanwhile, would be rid himself of a man that by that time had probably learned too much about him, perhaps becoming arrogant and even disdainful of him. Choosing a close associate as a scapegoat has the same value as the fall of the favorite. You may lose a friend or aid, but in the long-term scheme of things, it's more important to hide your mistakes than to hold on to someone who one day will probably turn against you. Besides, you can always find a new favorite to take his place. Part 2. Make use of the cat's paws. In the fable, the monkey grabs the paw of his friend the cat and uses it to fish chestnuts out of the fire, thus getting the nuts he craves without hurting himself. If there's something unpleasant or unpopular that needs to be done, it is far too risky for you to do the work yourself. You need a cat's paw, someone who does the dirty, dangerous work for you. The cat's paw grabs what you need, hurts whom you need hurt, and keeps people from noticing that you are the one responsible. Let someone else be the executioner or the bearer of bad news, while you bring only joy and glad tidings. All right. Okay, here we go. As a leader, you may imagine that constant diligence and the appearance of working harder than anyone else signify power. Actually, though, they have the opposite effect. They imply weakness. Why are you working so hard? Perhaps you are incompetent and have to put in extra effort just to keep up. Perhaps you are one of those people who does not know how to delegate and has to meddle in everything. The truly powerful, on the other hand, seem never to be in a hurry or overburdened. While others work their fingers to the bone, they take their leisure. They know how to find the right people to put in the effort while they save their energy and keep their hands out of the fire. Similarly, you may believe that by taking on the dirty work yourself, involving yourself directly in unpleasant actions, you impose your power and instill fear. In fact, you make yourself look ugly and abusive of your high position. Truly powerful people keep their hands clean. Only good things surround them, and the only announcements they make are of glorious achievements. You will often find it necessary, of course, to expend energy or to effect an evil but necessary action, but you must never appear to be this action's agent. Find a cat's paw. Develop the arts of finding, using, and in time, getting rid of these people when their cat's paw role has been fulfilled. On the eve of an important river battle, the great 3rd century Chinese strategist Zhuge Liang found himself falsely accused of secretly working for the other side. As proof of his loyalty, his commander ordered him to produce 100,000 arrows for the army within 3 days or be put to death. Instead of trying to manufacture the arrows, an impossible task, Liang took a dozen boats and had bundles of straw lashed to their sides. In the late afternoon, when mist always blanketed the river, he floated the boats toward the enemy camp. Fearing a trap from the wily Zhuge Liang, the enemy did not attack the barely visible boats with boats of their own, but showered them with arrows from the bank. As Liang's boats inched closer, they redoubled the rain of arrows, which stuck in the thick straw. After several hours, the men hiding on board sailed the vessels quickly downstream, where Chuko Liang met them and collected his 100,000 arrows. Liang would never do the work that others could do for him. He was always thinking up tricks like this one. The key to planning such a strategy is the ability to think far ahead, to imagine ways in which other people can be baited into doing the job for you. An essential element in making the strategy work is to disguise your goal, shrouding it in mystery, like the strange enemy boats appearing dimly in the mist. When your rivals cannot be sure what you're after, they will react in ways that often work against them in the long run. In fact, they will become your cat's paws. If you disguise your intentions, it's much easier to guide them into moves that accomplish exactly what you want done, but prefer not to do yourself. This may require planning several moves in advance, like a billiard ball that bounces off the sides a few times before heading into the right pocket. The early 20th century American con artist Yellow Kid Wheel knew that no matter how skillfully he honed in on the perfectly wealthy sucker, if he, a stranger, approached this man directly, the sucker might become suspicious. So Weil would find someone the sucker already knew to serve as a cat's paw, someone lower on the totem pole who was himself an unlikely target and would therefore be less suspicious. Weil would interest this man in a scheme promising incredible wealth. Convinced the scheme was for real, the cat's paw would often suggest, without prompting, that his boss or wealthy friend should get involved. Having more cash to invest, this man would increase the size of the pot, making bigger bucks to invest. This man would, making bigger bucks for all concerned. The cat's paw would then involve the wealthy sucker, who had all along been Wheel's target, but who would not suspect a trap, since it was his trusty subordinate who had roped him in. Devices like this are often the best way to approach a person of power. Use an associate or subordinate to hook you up with your primary target. The cat's paw establishes your credibility and shields you from the unsavory appearance of being too pushy in your courtship. The easiest and most effective way to use a cat's paw is often to plant information with him that will then spread to your primary target. False or planted information is a powerful tool, especially if spread by a dupe whom no one suspects. You will find it very easy to play innocent and disguise yourself as a source. The strategic therapist, Dr. Milton Erickson, would often encounter among his patients a married couple in which the wife wanted the therapy, but the husband absolutely refused it. Rather than wasting energy trying to deal with the man directly, Dr. Erickson would see the wife alone, and as she talked, he would interject interpretation of the husband's behavior that he knew would rile the husband up if he heard them. Sure enough, the wife would tell her husband what the doctor had said, and after a few weeks, the husband would be so furious he would insist on joining his wife in the sessions so he could set the doctor straight. Finally, you may well find cases in which deliberately offering yourself as a cat's paw will ultimately gain you power. This was the ruse of the perfect courtier. Its symbol is Sir Walter Raleigh, who once placed his own cloak on the muddy ground so that Queen Elizabeth would not sully her shoes. As an instrument that protects a master appear from unpleasantness or danger, you gain immense respect, which sooner or later will pay dividends. And remember, if you can make your assistant subtle and gracious rather than boastful and burdensome, your recompense will be that much more the satisfying and powerful. Reversal. The cat's paw and the scapegoat must be used with extreme caution and delicacy. They are like the screens that hide your own involvement in dirty work from the public. If at any moment the screen is lifted and you are seen as the manipulator, the puppet master, the whole dynamic turns around. Your hand will be seen everywhere, and you will be blamed for misfortunes you may have had nothing to do with. Once the truth is revealed, events will snowball beyond your control. In 1572, the Queen of France conspired to do away with an admiral in the French Navy and leading member of the French Protestant community. The admiral was close to Catherine's son, Charles IX, Catherine being the queen, and she feared his growing influence on the young king. So she arranged for a member of a particular family, one of the most powerful royal clans in France, to assassinate him. Secretly, however, the queen had another plan. She wanted the Huguenots to blame the Guises for killing one of their leaders and to take revenge. With one blow, she would erase or injure two threatening rivals, the admiral and the Guise family. Yet both plans went awry. The assassin missed his target, only wounding the admiral. Knowing Catherine Knowing Catherine as his enemy, he strongly suspected it was she who had set up the attack on him, and he told the king so. Eventually, the failed assassination and the arguments that ensued from it set off a chain of events that led to a bloody civil war between Catholics and Protestants, culminating in the horrifying massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, in which thousands of Protestants were killed. If you have to use a cat's paw or scapegoat in an action of great consequence, be very careful. Too much can go wrong. It's often wiser to use such dupes in more innocent endeavors where mistakes or miscalculations will cause no serious harm. Finally, there are moments when it is advantageous not to disguise your involvement or responsibility, but rather take the blame yourself for some mistake. If you have power and are secure in it, you should sometimes play the penitent. With a sorrowful look, you ask forgiveness from those weaker than you. It is the ploy of the king who makes a show of his own sacrifices for the good of the people. Similarly, upon occasion, you may want to appear as the agent of punishment in order to instill fear and trembling in your subordinates. Instead of the cat's paw, you show your own mighty hand as a threatening gesture. Play such a card sparingly. If you play it too often, fear will turn into resentment and hatred. Before you know it, such emotions will spark a vigorous opposition that will someday bring you down. Get in the habit of using a cat's paw. It's far safer. And that is the end of Law 26 of the 48 Laws of Power about using a cat's paw or using a scapegoat to disguise your involvement in any kinds of nefarious or dirty deals. And again, it's one of those things, this is again one of the chapters that has to do, is more helpful, I think, to higher ranking people, presidents and secretaries of state and kings and queens and whatnot, because most of us are not going to be out doing dirty deals. Maybe it's beneficial for people that are in various clubs or even gangs, but for the average butcher, baker, candlestick maker, I don't see much use for it. Again, it's wildly entertaining. It's interesting to hear the stories about various people and how they succeeded and or failed with cat's paws or scapegoats. So Tuesday is the next day that I will be reading from the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, and I'll be reading Law 27, Play on People's Need to Believe to Create a Cult-like Following. People have an overwhelming desire to believe in something. Become the focal point of such desire by offering them a cause, a new faith to follow. Keep your words vague but full of promise. Emphasize enthusiasm over rationality and clear thinking. Give your new disciples rituals to perform. Ask them to make sacrifices on your behalf. In the absence of organized religion and grand causes, your new belief system will bring you untold power. And that will be on Tuesday, which will be, I believe, August the 1st. So thank you for joining me. Oh, no, wait a minute. Not on Tuesday. Tomorrow. Because this is Saturday, the 29th, so we'll be actually doing this chapter, Law 27, tomorrow, Sunday, the 30th of July. I apologize for that. So tomorrow, July 30th, I will be reading Law 27. So until then, have a great Saturday, and thanks for joining me.